know, I'm going to tell you right now, there are times in this job where things are just not fair because you end up having your entire plan co-opted. Oh, hi, how you doing? Yeah, you're right. I am wearing the same 14 hat and the same 14 shirt. Funny thing about that, why, Nick, would you be wearing such specific attire, especially for this video? Well, let me tell you, okay? I had ideas. I had content planned. I had things I was going to do. I had jokes I was going to make. But then, all right, on the eve of releasing a truly wonderful little diatribe I had planned about how life doesn't always go according to plan. And the way you can tell is sometimes stuff like Telesto happens. Telesto is a weapon from Destiny, okay? And it is the weirdest weapon. And yes, I will still release that at some point. But here's the thing. I finished the video on Telesto. I was like, oh, this will be a great joke. I'll make this joke and I'll be educating people about some nerdy crap at the exact same time. I finished the video and I put it away and I went to bed. I got in nice and cuddly, right? I was all tucked in and I'm wearing my jammies and I'm listening, I'm listening to the Deep Stone Lullaby and I'm drifting off and everything's great. And in that moment, I was visited by the 9. Oh, who are the 9, you say to me? Oh, I'll tell you who the 9 are, all right? The 9 are individuals who you're going to learn about in this very video. The 9 were like, listen, you have 2 options, okay? You can either become a squid-faced lunatic who gives weaponry and armor to a bunch of wackadoos who worry more about fashion than they do about defeating dark forces in the universe. You can become that guy with a weird voice, just hunched over and constantly saying things that don't make any sense, and hanging out with a horse that's made out of stars, but is not a horse, but looks like a horse and neighs on occasion. You can either be stuck doing that, or you can do the video that I am about to do. So, I hope you're prepared, because I, Uncle Nicky, am about to explain to anyone who's actually watching this the entirety of the Destiny timeline in less than 60 minutes. Oh, don't worry, though. Don't worry. I know. You're thinking to yourself, oh, my God, Nicky, that's a lot to cover. It's not too bad. The whole thing just starts before time and space existed. It's all right. Be prepared, okay? I'm marking the time. Ready, set. Here we go. Okay, before the universe existed, okay, there were 2 individuals, the gardener and the winnower. The gardener was basically like every hippy-dippy granola-eating, plant-based milk person that the people who apologize to the worms because they are afraid that they stepped on them. The gardener was all about life and light and creation and joy and things just growing, right? The gardener was just like, I'm just going to let everything grow in abundance forever and always. And the winnower was basically the grumpy aunt who is chain smoking the entire time and basically wants every fucking thing to die because it's just annoying. It just bugs the fuck out of her constantly, and there's no way that it should just keep going away. It is. So the gardener and the winnower were like, okay, you know what? Here we are. We're trapped inside this giant space, which is infinite on the inside and yet is super massively compressed in the other universe. We're just hanging out. We're going to play a game. You and I will play a game, right? Said the gardener to the winnower. And they started playing what they called the flower game. Every day, whatever a day was, since time didn't exist, the gardener would grow, right, and expand and allow life to thrive and survive and push beyond and evolve and take over. And every night, since time didn't exist, the winnower would be like, I'm going to reap all that. I'm going to wipe it all out. We're going to start clean in the morning. And the gardener would be like, oh, man, that sucks, bro. But it's all right. I'll start over again the next day. And maybe I'll come up with some wild, crazy life type stuff that'll just go on forever and the winnower won't be able to wipe out. And every single night, even though time didn't exist, the winnower was like, I can't stand any of this. I'm cleaning everything out. So this was the pattern. We don't know how many times they did it. We don't know how expansive it was. We don't know exactly how long it took for this to take place because time wasn't recorded yet and our universe didn't exist. So the gardener finally got tired of the way that this was going because the flower game just kept going over and 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 over again, right? So the gardener was finally like, you know what? We're going to do this for realsies, bro. And so the gardener designed this giant white cheddar cheese doodle, right? Not a doodle. The doodles that formed like snakes. No, not a cheese doodle, like a cheese ball. You know how you buy those big like tubs of cheese balls, but around holidays they come in white cheddar, like it tastes any fucking different? Okay. White cheddar cheese ball of life. All right? White cheddar cheese ball of life. And so the gardener's like, white cheddar cheese ball of life, and sent it out. And the second it pierced the veil of wherever they were contained outside of time and space, that was the Big Bang, apparently. Okay, so the gardener's like, poof, white cheese ball of life. It sends it out there, right? Everybody on Earth later comes to know it as the traveler, but I always call it the white cheese ball of life. So white cheese ball of life, go! And so he was like, bro, that worked out all right. And the winnower woke up that morning and went, what did you do? Things are different. And the gardener's like, well, I didn't do anything, So it is what it is, I guess. And the winnower's like, you're gonna tell me what you were doing, or I'm gonna end up getting very mad at you, and I'm just gonna wipe everything out, like forever. So the gardener was like, bro, you promise you're not gonna be bad? And the winnower is like, I promise. So the gardener's like, I kind of sort of created like a giant, massive white cheese ball of life, and I sent it out into the plane of existence known as the universe. And the winnower is like, well, that's not fair. I guess I should probably design something and send it after your pretty little white cheddar cheese ball. And the gardener, being as mellow as he is just like, okay, go ahead, send it out there. So as the gardener had the white cheese ball of life, the winnower created the uncool ranch Doritos of death. All right. If you see the image, oh, there they are. Yeah. Now here's the fucking thing, okay? The gardener's like, oh, I'll just build one of these, right? Right? Okay. And the winnower is just like, oh no, I'm gonna make a shit ton of those. Because I'm not playing by the rules no more. You ended up creating a universe that has time and space and cause and effect, right? And you designed a giant white cheese ball, which has the ability to break cause and effect, therein being a paracausal being. And so I'm going to create a bunch of uncool ranch Doritos. I'm going to send them out there, and they're going to be the portents of death. All right? Yeah, great time had by all. So once the universe kind of blew into existence, right, the great worms emerged, right? In the creation of whole universe also came the great worms, right? And the final pattern kind of set itself in motion, all right? What's the final pattern? Well, here's the thing, okay? Burst into the universe, right? Giant cheese ball of life's like, wee, I'm going to create life all over the place. And the uncool ranch Doritos are like, we're going to find that white cheese ball. We're going to destroy that white cheese ball. And we're going to make everybody who saw the white cheese ball pay. So the great worms, they were like, oh, wow, we exist, I guess. So we're just going to be floating in the deepest, darkest oceans of worlds all over the place. Okay, this works for me. And we also might have what is considered by humanity as magic. All right. Well, the white cheese ball of life also set the final pattern in motion. And that final pattern was all of these little itty bitty like things float in what looks like basically milk. All right. Microcosms, which gain sentience. And they realized that they were better off if they designed a hive mind. So a bunch of milk decided that it was sentient. And that bunch of milk decided that it was sentient, but it needed bodies, because what's it going to do if it's just in a glass somewhere? So it was like, you know what we got to do? We got to figure out a way to design robot bodies out of the materials that exist between us in the milk. So they started doing that. And that became the Vex. Put a pin in the Vex. Okay? So you got the great worms out there, and you got the final pattern of the Vex out there, right? And you got the giant cheese ball, and you got the uncool ranch Doritos of death. And they're all journeying. Things are going fine. Don't know how much time passes, but somewhere in there, right? Somewhere in there, a ship of unknown origin crashes into a world called Fundament. All right? This is kind of important, and I'll explain why in a minute. In the midst of the giant ship crashing into Fundament, right? The great worms, right, that were trapped in the core of Fundament got free. And they're like, hey, we're out of the trap. We can wander the waters of Fundament. This is pretty freaking cool. And amongst those individuals were a bunch of beings called the Krill. The ship crashes into Fundament, cracks open the core of Fundament. The worms get out. The giant worms, they're huge. Think the sandworms from, that one. So the giant worms get out, right? And they're roaming around, and they realize they got magic, and they're encountering other sentient individuals, and they're like, hey, we got a pretty good thing going on here. We should be able to make some magic. And that's all right. So they're on Fundament, right? And the Krill have crashed on the Fundament. But guess what? The Krill weren't the first sentient beings to be on the world, because there were also this series of giant cockroach beings known as the Hive. All right? Giant, like grouchy, like bone-covered beings called the Hive. All right? So, giant cheese ball, uncool ranch Doritos, flying through space, doing their own fucking thing. Great worms freed from the center of Fundament. The Krill on Fundament. The Krill wipe out, right? They conquer Fundament. Like, they're like, damn, we got this. We're going to overthrow the ruling body on Fundament known as the Osmium Court. The Osmium Court had a king. That king got killed. The king's 3 daughters decide that they're going to be like, oh, we got to figure out a way of getting our fucking revenge. And so it's a perfect fucking storm, because the 3 Osmium sisters run into the worms, right? And the worms have this magic about them, and they're like, hey, you know what we can do? The giant worms, you remember those ones, right? The giant worms say to the 3 sisters, hey, you know what? We can give you power if you want it, like, we have the ability to, like, bestow, let's call them wishes on you. You make a wish to us, we give you the power you wish for, we'll be able to play a little bit of a back and forth. It'll be a quid pro quo. We get stronger when you make wishes, we grant the wishes. But we might monkey paw some of that shit. And that is exactly what they do. Because the 3 Osmium sisters decide, you know what? We're going to make wishes on you guys. And they did. And those 3 Osmium sisters ended up becoming 2 Osmium sisters and an Osmium brother. So you got Oryx, you've got Zivu-Arath, and you've got Savathun, right? You've got the Taken King, right? Was one of the Osmium sisters, is now a king. Oryx, the Taken King. You've got Savathun, the goddess of deception. And you've got Zivu-Arath, the god of war. And they decide, guess what? The fucking Krill, we're going to boot them right off a fucking planet. And they ended up doing that. But in the essence of regaining that power and having made the wish for revenge, they also decided that they were mad at the forces that caused the ship to crash in to fundament, right? No, doesn't matter. No, never mind that great great worms got free, and that's how they got the power. They're like, no, screw this nonsense. That giant ship that crashed into the world that brought the krill here ended up killing our father and destroying half of our kingdom. So we're gonna get fucking revenge. So Oryx, Savathun, and Zivu-Rat decide, oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're going to figure out what caused the problem. And they realize that there's an old story about a giant cheese ball that flew by the planet. And hey, that giant cheese ball flew by the planet right before the fucking ship came. And the krill ended up showing up. And I'll bet you that cheese ball has something to do with it. So they're like, we're leaving the planet. We're going to leave the planet. We're going to conquer fucking systems. We're going to find that cheese ball and we're going to destroy it, or we're going to suck the power out of its bones. Let me tell you right now, okay? Let me tell you right now. The osmium siblings, all right? Oryx, Savathun, and Zivu-Rat, they're fucking metal, all right? They say shit like that all the time. Their religion is called the sword logic, all right? Everything's made of, like, bone and sinew and dark magic, and all is, like, if they kill enough people and become a god, then if their physical corporeal self ever dies, they go to what's known as a throne world and they can regenerate back into the real world. It's fucking crazy. Like, it's very hardcore. So all this happened, right? And so Oryx, Savathun, and Zivu-Rat, they're like, we're going to end up building ships. And Oryx is like, yeah, but that's not enough. I also need more power. So Oryx goes to one of the worms, Akka, and goes, hey, I need more fucking power. You're going to give me more fucking power. And Akka's like, there ain't no fucking way I'm giving you more power. You're crazy as it is. So Oryx fucking cuts Akka in half and uses dark fucking magics to generate 2 children out of the halves of the worm. I told you, they're fucking metal. It's crazy. So Oryx is like, I'm going to find whatever power I can. I'm going to use sword logic whatever way I can. I'm going to conquer everything. I'm going to kill what stands in my way. I'm going to rule the universe. Okay, bud. Okay, I get you. Fine. Just about that time, the Vex, having had eons and untold millennia to build bodies, finally were able to build robot bodies out of the stuff that was in between the milk in the glass, and they were able to allow themselves to make multiple bodies so that the milk could spontaneously, like, expand or multiply, so they're just grown to the point where at some point in the near future there's so many Vex in so much milk that there's actually fountains and waterfalls of it, and it ends up taking over whole planets. It's freaking crazy. Also, it has a high static charge, so it can actually hurt you if you step in it, and it can kill you if you drink it. The most evil milk ever. So the Vex show up, right, on Fundament, right, and they start attacking Oryx because Oryx is a very big target. And the Vex is like, oh, you know what? We're smart. If we take over the whole universe, guess what? We'll be able to make sure that everything makes sense, that everything will be fine. Right? So the Vex invade Oryx's throne world. Oryx is like, I'm going to kill them all. Oryx had a child back when Oryx was one of the Osmium sisters, right? I'm not dead naming Oryx, but Oryx had a child when Oryx was one of the Osmium sisters, right? And that child's name was Crota. And Crota was like, Dad, you're getting a little bit crazy here. I don't know if this is all right. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think the Crota might have just been going through a teenage thing, which I don't know how that would work, given the fact that, like, Oryx was, like, ancient back eons past and is still alive when we end up interacting with him. So I don't know how that works precisely. But anyway, Crota was basically like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm grown. And Oryx was like, you know what? You go to your fucking room. I'm what's left of Fundament. And I'm going to take my ship, and I'm going to go sword logic the shit out of the rest of the universe. And Crota was like, fine. So, as the Vex start doing what the Vex always do, which is basically like assimilating shit, because it likes to, like, suck up all the information of societies it comes across in order to, like, basically break them down into elements that they eventually will use. Again, the worst bad milk ever, which is what happens when your sentient milk that was generated at the very dawn of time, you are way past your expiration date, buddy. But I digress. Okay? So, the Vex are basically scooping information that they can off of Fundament, right? And they send that back to the collective, which is back on the planet that they originally started on or the glass that they originally started in. I'm not quite sure. All right? Well, in the whole process, right? You got 3 siblings who survived the death of their father, right? Discovering that they could steal magic powers from giant worms that were living in the core of their planet the whole time, yeah? And blame the whole thing on the giant cheese ball that passed by their planet in myth. It's a little fucking tough, right? It's a little fucking tough. But on top of it, one of them's a god of deception, the other is a god of war, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, Oryx was a little bit of a god of passive aggressive. So, the 3 of them are like, you know what? Fuck you. No, you know what? Fuck you. No, you know what? Fuck you. I love you. I'll see you for the holidays. But until then, go do your own fucking thing. I'm going to go do my own fucking thing. Fine. And they went in their separate directions, right? Perfectly fine. Go do your deception over there, Savathun. Zivu, you go over there and do your war wherever, right? And I'm going to do what I do, which is just conquer and be all moody and shit and use my bat wings and look badass the entire time. Right. Okay, cool. About that time, as the universe was expanding and things were going on, so on and so forth, in our solar system, still millennia before we existed, right? Our planets became. And at the center of each one of those planets, well, basically each one of those planets was an egg. I know, it's getting fucking weird. Brace yourself, including the sun. So the sun was an egg, and Mercury was an egg, and Venus was an egg, and Mars was an egg, and Earth was an egg, and Saturn was an egg, and Uranus was an egg, and Neptune was an egg, and Jupiter was an egg. Did I say Saturn? And Pluto wasn't a fucking planet, so it didn't get to be an egg. I said what I said. Neil deGrasse Tyson backs me up. What are you going to do about it? Anyway, so each one of the planets and the sun in our solar system became a gestation, vessel for dark matter primordial beings known as the Nine, which basically are infinite beings that can perceive time, exist outside of our understanding of reality, and are both infinitely old, forever existing, never having been born, and like to fuck with us quite often. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Trust me, they get so grumpy about shit further down the line. But as they were awakening and realizing who they were and starting to be able to communicate amongst themselves, because they have conversations and squabbles and other shit, out at another point, there was the Cabal, right? There was another species, giant, grumpy, pig-faced space turtles. I know, bear with me. And they existed as a society, right? And I'm not saying this happened simultaneously, right? But you have the society of pig-faced turtle people, and the pig-faced turtle people end up having a militaristic society, right? They enter into a renaissance after they figure out that they want to exist as an empire. They actually have a situation set up very similar to Rome. You see where this is going? It's not going to go well. All right. So they're like, you know what? We are the empire. We have the Praetori. I'm serious about this. Really wrong. I'm not saying that we should be suing them, but they were kind of cribbing our notes, or maybe we got the ideas from them. Who's to say? I mean, ancient aliens. Anyways, so they end up setting up an empire. And amidst the empire, their Julius Caesar is a character by the name of Callus. He's basically what happens when you take Jabba the Hutt and a hippopotamus and combine the two. It's a whole fucking look. Yeah, that's the look. It's not, loves everything gold. I love everything gold. And so he was just like, you know what? I'm the emperor. You are all my minions. This is going to be fucking awesome. Let's do this. All right. So he takes over, right? He gets rid of the Senate, right? He ends up being like, nope, nobody is in charge except for me. We're going to expand like crazy. We're going to take over other species like the Scions, which were a psychic race that could generate like dreamscapes and shit like that. Yeah. Callus is like, you guys are part of us now. Look, welcome to the Cabal. You'll be great additions. We're going to have so much fun. You're also going to help keep me alive way beyond my expanded lifespan, right? So at this point, the giant cheese ball in space passes by a planet called Riz. We'll go with Riz. Anyways, the giant cheese ball in space passes by a planet called Riz. And on Riz exists a species of multi-armed critters known as the Elixni. And the Elixni are like, oh, that giant cheese ball is blessing us with knowledge and abilities. And it's given us a golden age. This is going to become a thing. Just be prepared. All right. So as this is all going on for the Elixni having a grand old time. And it's like the giant cheese ball in space is like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I think I'll hang out here for a while. Because there's a possibility that the giant cheese ball contains the gardener, or is part of the gardener, or is like the 9, but contained within the giant cheese ball. It's a whole fucking thing. Again, nobody knows. It's one of the great mysteries. We still don't quite know. Sometimes it communicates with us. Anyway, so the giant cheese ball in space, it settles around Riz for a while, giving out Riz. And it's like, okay, cool. We got this. Everything's perfectly fine. So things are going pretty smooth up until the giant cheese ball in space stayed a little too long. And the Uncool Ranch Doritos showed up. And we're like, you ain't hanging out here. We're going to undo all of the cool shit you did. So the giant cheese ball is like, peace out, bros. And takes off, right? And as the giant cheese ball takes off, the people of Riz, the Elixni, they experience what's called the whirlwind, all right? Where all of the good vibes were coming off the cheese ball. Now you got the Uncool Ranch Doritos, and they're making everybody fucking emo, and they start losing their mind, and they're experiencing bad memories, and they're thinking about plagues end up settling, and all of these bad things happen, and they go through all this awful thing. For the most part, the Elixni were homebodies up until this whole whirlwind thing happened, and then they became spacefaring pirates, right? 4-armed spacefaring pirates. Right? Okay, cool. So, the whole thing goes down, and the hierarchy of the Elixni are like, you know what? We got to ration ether. We got to make sure that not a whole lot of people can get more than they're allowed. So they're like, shit, we're gonna build a hierarchy around those who are allowed to have ether and those who just get like little drips and drabs. All right? It was pretty messed up, especially given the fact that, this whole thing is going down. They're dealing with a lot of shit. And in the midst of everything, right? Riz gets damaged. That's right. The Elixni stop having Riz. It's very, very sad. I've seen it happen to people I know. It's tragic. So, in Riz getting damaged, everybody starts pointing fingers. They're all feeling a little bit emo and stressed out because, one, they're rationing ether because the planet used to make ether, and having the giant cheese ball, ether was basically as abundant as the very bad milk that, starts taking over planets randomly. And now Riz is decimated completely, and they've got to figure out exactly what the fuck they're going to do. So they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start fighting amongst ourselves, and we're going to form houses, and we're going to become clans, and this whole thing is going to go down like crazy. And they got some pretty metal names when it comes to the houses. There's the House of Wolves, and there's the House of Dusk, and there's the House of Smoke, and there's the House of this and that and the other thing. There's never a House of the Rising Sun. There's no House of Pancakes. Though if I was a Elixni, you can bet your bottom fucking dollar. I would be remiss at this point to point out that in the midst of becoming a bunch of clans, right? Becoming piratical. I mean, they got like sails on their ships, right? And they've got like sea shanties, and their entire history is told through song and stories, right? But they also have these adorable babies. Check this shit out. I know, right? Adorable. So, the Elixni decide that they're going to become a bunch of seafaring, well, spacefaring pirates based on this clan system they've got set up. It's going to be warring clans the entire time. But the one thing all the clans can decide on is if we can catch the giant cheese ball and leech its power like it was so generous to give us before. If we capture it and if we take it, we're going to be able to get back our Riz. So they all decided, oh, yeah, we'll fight amongst ourselves. But while we're fighting amongst ourselves, we're going to be heading in the direction of the giant cheese ball because we all want our Riz back. So they get like weirdly codependent too in the process. We're coming up with sea shanties. We got our ships. We're starting fights amongst clans. We're trying to get our Riz back. But also, we're going to start worshiping the machines. We're going to design a lot of machines that we worship like the giant cheese ball. The machines that we use to ration our ether are called servitors. And the servitors, they're going to look like the giant cheese ball because we love the cheese ball, but we hate the cheese ball, right? Because codependent relationship. Anyway, so for those playing a home game, you got this super evil bad milk that went bad basically at the dawn of time and is constantly expanding and building robot bodies so that it can eventually assimilate all of life throughout the universe and basically become, the only living anything anywhere. You've got the giant cockroach people that like are all death metal themed, and they're like, fuck, we have gods who killed giant worms and they have powers and it's crazy. And then you have the Elixni, which are basically space pirate cockroaches who have sea shanties, worship the giant cheese ball, and they're all trying to figure out where it went. Oh, and lest we forget, over there in the distance, right over there in the distance, you also have the Roman Empire coded giant pig-faced turtle people who are ruled by a combination of Jabba the Hutt and one of those water bears, yeah, that thing. So, yeah, basically. Okay. So, giant cheese ball in space has been, for what we can assume, has been flying in a straight line. Don't know why. Maybe out from the center of the universe, maybe into the center of the universe. Who's to say? Doesn't matter. Because giant cheese ball shows up in our solar system, right? And as it's passing by the planets that it does, and listen, the entire time, it's rolling by, right? Playing the White Album, right? Just being like, this is very chill, man. We're going to take our time. We're going to do our thing. Terraforms Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, all in one go. All in one go. Just all of a sudden, boop, they're there. Now, this is very important for a very big reason in the near future because it doesn't just terraform these planets. It also terraforms another planet, but we'll get to it in a little bit, okay? Promise, I promise, all right? Europa becomes somewhat habitable. It becomes a whole thing, all right? So, we got the planets that end up getting changed, right? All right. And the traveler is creeping up on Mars, right? It's creeping up on Mars. It gets into the orbit of Mars. And as it gets into Mars, oh, wait a second. It just happens to show up at Mars. At the exact same time, humanity sent a unit of humans, like a collective world collective to Mars. And these astronauts on Mars are like, oh, there's one small step for man, one giant leap for... Holy shit. Like, what is that giant cheese ball? And all at once, it's like the the giant cheese ball goes, I'm going to send out the good vibes, bro. And starts sending out the good vibes. And this is the beginning of humanity's golden age, which also coincides with the founding of the most evil corporation ever. We can't escape it, even in sci-fi, guys. I don't know what the fuck to do. By the way, super evil bad milk that's built robot bodies, yeah, they've discovered Venus at this point. Like, the giant cheese ball terraformed Venus, and now they're like, hey, that's a planet that we can inhabit. What's going on in this neck of the woods, I wonder? So humanity expands. Like, it ends up getting super fucking smart, super fucking fast. And Clovis Bray, the company that was founded, right, the super evil corporation, ends up doing what super evil corporations stop fucking doing. Or I should say, what super evil corporations founded by one giant asshole, or should I say one giant headed moron, we'll get to it, put a pin in it, ends up doing. Clovis Bray and his company ends up absorbing all of these other technology companies, especially a company that invented engram technology. Engram technology is basically being able to put any sized thing made in reality into a very small and very lightweight geometric shape, right? Yeah, that geometric shape. So, engrams basically are the way that we get everything when we're playing a game. But engrams can basically contain ships, they can contain clothing, they can contain massive amounts of food. Like, we can contract stuff down to fit inside of engrams and then expand it outwards afterwards. Basically, we deal in a lot of hod-like constructs. Another thing that happened during this time was the Warmind project started. The Warmind project was, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take AI and we're going to put it in charge of a bunch of fucking weapon platforms throughout a network system that's going to expand across every single of the now terraformed planets, except for one planet we'll get to. So, Warmind project's going on. Oh, by the way, the Warmind is named Rasputin. Again, portents of fantabulosity. I'll tell you what. So, the Warmind gets designed. Rasputin comes online. Rasputin's like, okay, this works. We understand everything. We're starting to gather information. We're in charge of all the weapons. We're also in charge of every single computer system all over the place. It's going to be fantastic. We got this in the bag, not a problem. Exoscience has been invented. Clovis Bray says, you know what we need to do? We need to be able to take a human brain. We need to be able to record it. We need to pop it into a robot body as many times as necessary. Right? So I can take, I don't know, myself, said Clovis Bray, and I can live forever by putting my brain, or a recording of my brain, into thousands of different bodies. It'll be great. Including, I'm not fucking kidding, he decides that he's going to make himself into a machine god. So what he does is he develops a giant head, right? In the center of the research base in Europa. They do it in Europa because with all the ice on Europa, they're able to cool all the processes they have built into beneath the surface. It's a whole fucking thing. So he's developing basically robot clones, which the first couple of generations go crazy and kill themselves. It's a grand old time. He develops the Warmind project, basically creating an AI that's going to protect the solar system. Yikes. And then, all of a sudden, Clovis has a dream, kind of like a nightmare. And it's like, hey, you know what? I know about something. Something that's buried deep. I can get at it. I know wherever it is. So he starts research programs that locate strange, anomalous pieces of technology. Doesn't know what they are. Doesn't know what they do, but he's like, we can take them apart and we can start, piecing it together and all that crazy shit, right? Okay. So humanity's having a golden age. Things are going great. Everything's fucking hunky-dory. But with everything that's happening and with the giant cheese ball hovering over Earth and having bestowed upon humanity all of this wonderfulness, Those giant worms, you remember? Yep, those ones. They're like, oh man, it's a nice solar system you got here. It would be a terrible shame if you couldn't do everything your heart desires. I'll tell you what, we'll find the oceans on the planets in your solar system, whether or not they be liquid water or they be like hydrogen or whatever. We'll chill out in your oceans, you know. And if you ever get the inkling to, ask for something, we could make a trade, including the frozen oceans of Mars. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, a lot of good things coming to the solar system. And remember I told you that Clovis had a dream and discovered some technology buried on planets in the solar system. They started messing with it and reverse engineering it. Yeah, part of that technology was Vex technology, right? Oh, yeah, no, I'm not kidding. And not only does he go, oh my God, this is an advanced technology that we can definitely backwards compatible with the stuff that we're building and make billions of dollars off of. And make sure that, yet again, I am creating an immortal form of myself, which is going to be likened to a giant robot of me. He decides that in the midst of this, there's a signature buried underneath, because each and every one of the bodies that the Vex build for themselves, right, has a address on how to go home. It can form a portal and go back home, right? So Clovis opens the portal. No, I'm not joking. Underneath the surface of Europa, he opens the portal. And guess what happens? The Vex are like, oh, you gave us a door. So they start rushing into the system. It's fan-fucking-tastic. I know. All this is going on, right? The Vex network has access to our solar system, right? Gets shut down, but not before things go terribly fucking wrong, okay? The exos now exist. They all have consciousness. They're starting to do things, right? The hive worms are starting to show up. People are starting to discover them, including beneath the surface of the moon, right? Because apparently, in the process of adapting and gaining power from all the wishes that were made upon them, in the course of their journeys, they also learned how to exist outside of water. Fan-fucking-tastic, because that's the one thing I need. Moon sandworms. I'll let you play with that for a minute. We're not calling him Shia Halud or Shia LaBeouf. I don't care. Oh, and the warm mind, Rasputin, he's like, you know what? Human bodies, kind of like soft and squishy. I got to come up with a technology that'll be able to do what they do 10 times faster, and I can control it. Because I have the ego of my creator, Clovis Bray, and I have access to every computerized system in the world. So Rasputin's like, I'm going to develop this thing called SIVA. They're nanites. Nothing will go wrong with nanite technology. It's about this time that the Uncool Ranch Doritos are detected. They're heading in the direction of our solar system. Things aren't going great, all right? It's not. Humanity starts preparing for what's going to happen. They form something called the Black Armory, which basically is making the coolest, most badass weapons on the face of the planet, right? They start evacuating and pulling back towards Earth because they're like, shit, things are about to go down. At the very same time, they decide that they're going to start making giant colony ships so that they can leave the system just in case things go bad, right? They create a bunch of ships called the Exodus Project. There's an Exodus Black, there's an Exodus Green, there's an Exodus Blue, so on and so forth. And they start like going, they're like, we're going to take off, we're going to get going, we're going to flee before the giant Uncool Ranch Doritos show up, right? Okay. Remember Callus? Listen, I spent years having to stare at that face. You got to put up with this too, okay? Callus ends up having to deal with an overthrow, a coup, if you will, by one of the gladiators that fought in his arenas by the name of Gaul. Gaul doesn't look any prettier. Actually, Gaul is worse. Gaul is an albino version of I'll just show you. It looks like he took fashion tips from Darth Vader and the Pope. And people wonder why we have a thing for fashion in this game. We got worms in the system. Clovis Bray is a giant bag of dicks, but also a giant head underneath the surface of Europa. Right? Gaul is taking over the Cabal, but Callus is also like, you know what? I'm just going to take my pleasure barge and beat fucking feet. So it does. We get the Exodus ships leaving the system. All of this shit's about to go down, right? And the Uncle Ranch Doritos, they end up in our solar system. The giant cheese ball of death is like, we got to get out of here. We got to go. We got to get out. We got to find a way out of here. We got to escape, right? But Rasputin's like, oh no, my friend, you're not going anywhere because we humanity, and by humanity, I mean the little squishy people who generated me and the most evil and most dickish of all of them, who gave me his ego, they're going to survive, and you're going to stick around to deal with them, and this is how we're going to do this. So Rasputin starts using the weapon platforms that have been in space, right? Starts going nuts. The Traveler tries to leave. Doesn't like that too much. In leaving, sends out a shockwave of energy, right? That ends up slamming into the Exodus vehicles, right? The black crashes onto Nessus, right? And the green ends up getting sucked into what's known as the distributary, okay? Both had crews on them, okay? The black, none of the crew survives, but the AI does. So the AI ends up being on the planet by itself for quite some time, just alone. So it starts going crazy and develops a second personality in order to keep itself company. All of the human beings that were on the Exodus Green survive once they enter the distributary, but become something else. They basically end up in what I like to refer to as Neon Rivendell in space. They basically become like space elves. All right? We'll get back to that. Put a pin in it for a second. All right? We're still 1,500 years out of me catching you up to exactly where the whole thing starts, okay? I'm going to get you to where the games start, and then that's basically, I've done my job. I said history. I didn't say I was going to give you everything that happened. All right? So the darkness is like, shit, what are we going to do? And because the Traveler, the giant cheese ball, is like, cheese dust everywhere! And just like a shockwave. And all of the Uncool Ranch Doritos are like, oh, bro just threw a fist? And they don't know how to fucking react because fucking white cheddar cheese ball has always been like kumbaya and shit. But now it's acting up. So they all freak the fuck out. Some of them crash. One crashes on the moon. One crashes on Mars. A couple more crash in other places. Fractals of them end up falling away. It's fucking crazy. I realize there's a lot of information. That's why I made this into a video. You can pause. You can take a break. You can go do stuff you need to do. It's perfectly allowed, right? Okay, so the giant cheese ball in space sends out a wave of cheese dust, right? Freaks the Uncool Ranch Doritos the fuck out, right? They start crashing into planets, right? They go dormant. They go silent. Rasputin is like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fucking deal with shit at the same time. We're going to like approach this at different platforms. We're going to take a multi-tiered attack here. And so Rasputin's like, I know there are worms in the system, right? The giant worms, right? I'm going to freeze them. So he starts using his technology on the platform, the weapon platforms he has to freeze the worms. So they're in like cryogenic stasis, all right? Everything's going down all at once. But on the planet Earth, the cheese dust, right, goes through the atmosphere. And as it's falling through the atmosphere very gently, it becomes these little guys. Like this little guy right here. These little ghosts. You know what? I'll show you this. So yeah, these little ghosts. And these little ghosts are basically extensions, like particles of the traveler. And the ghosts start going around all over the planet and all over the planets and all over everywhere. And each ghost finds a person, a dead person, and resurrects them, right? And they start out basically brand freaking new, and their brains are completely empty, and all they know is they're alive. Their ghost is basically talking to them and telling them what's going on and all this stuff. And it's a grand old time. And it's like, it doesn't give instructions. It's just like, I'm your ghost, I'm a gift to the traveler. You can't die anymore, and I can heal you, and I can generate hard light constructs, right? And I can store all your hard light constructs in my memory banks. Okay? There's these beings who are wandering around. The Risen, they call them. They call them the Risen, and they're wandering around, and they're doing all this stuff. And at first, a bunch of the Risen are like, okay, you know what? We're just going to become warlords. We're going to be dicks, and we're going to rule over humanity. But eventually, these really cool bunch of friends get together, and they're like, you know what? This isn't fucking cool. Humanity, those who aren't risen, deserve to live. And so what we're going to do is we're going to fight against those who are trying to be like all dickish, and we're going to end up allowing people to create a whole community. And they call themselves the Iron Lords. And it's pretty fucking cool. And I realize the term lords is a little gendered, but what the fuck ever. They're a bunch of good guys who start doing a bunch of great stuff, right? So they end up being like, you know what? We're gonna oppose the warlords. We're gonna help out people. We're gonna also take the opportunity to kind of like search for the traveler, because in the process of the giant cheese ball deciding it was just gonna be like and shut a bunch of the Uncool Ranch Doritos off, it also kind of like flew away a little bit, right? So they're like, geez, all this is going down, right? A lot of things are happening at the same time. And that, to make matters worse, right? Humanity starts putting itself back together. The Iron Lords are starting to like organize humanity, the remnants of humanity. That's when the Elixni ships start showing up, right? Clans of the Elixni start showing up, and it's like, the friggin' giant cheese ball was here, right? The machine god was here. What did you do with it? Where did it go? Also, you have some very cool technology. We're going to pillage and scavenge that stuff. So they start duking it out. And about that time is also when Callus shows up. Callus on his pleasure barge is like, this is a nice little system. And I know that the giant cheese ball was here. So we're going to start doing what we do best. We're going to start taking over places and making you guys, like beg for our safety and forgiveness. And while you're doing that, we're going to find the giant cheese ball, right? All this shit is going on, and it's getting crazy. And there's just wars and battles going on everywhere. And there's settlements that are going on around the world. And all of these humans are being drawn to one place, though. They're all being migratory, and they're not quite sure why. And they realize eventually that they're all being drawn to live underneath the traveler. Because what the traveler did was, it was like, giant cheese dust attack. And then it like whipped itself around the planet, got real low in orbit. And it's like, nobody's going to notice me. I might be a giant cheese ball roughly the size of the moon, but shh, be very, very quiet. Nobody's going to notice. I was like, okay, cool. You remember the space elves in Space Rivendell, right? They have a queen and her brother, the prince. The queen is Mara, and a prince is Aldrin, right? And Aldrin and Mara are like, you know what? We gotta explore out beyond the distributary, right? We need to go. We've established this very lovely city, and all this stuff, but we gotta go figure things out. Well, no, they hadn't figured out the city shit yet. What had happened was that they had basically been hanging out on the remnant of Exodus Green, right? So you got the space elves out there, and they're just like, oh, we got to figure it out. We've been living in the distributary where time isn't the same, and technically they could have been in the distributary for like 10 minutes and 400 years had passed out in our reality. And the beings that were on the Exodus screen, who now refer to themselves as the Awoken, because basically they got very pale skin and very bright blue eyes, that half of them are like, we're gonna go figure out what's going on back in the home universe, and the other half are like, no, we're not doing that. So there's a schism, and some of the Awoken, some of the space elves leave, and amongst them is Prince Aldrin, and Prince Aldrin's like, you know what, this is what's going down. Gets to Earth, it's like, hey, I kind of sort of remember this place, and finds the Traveler and is like, oh man, things have gotten really weird since the last time we were here. So things are going on, right? There's a whole bunch of battles going on. I have to point this next one out. Amongst those little, roaming bands who settle on occasion, there's one settlement called Zephyr Station, right? And Zephyr Station gets attacked by the Elixni, okay? And in the midst of the Elixni attacking Zephyr Station, the humans that are living in Zephyr Station get saved by one individual by the name of Saint 14. Now, Saint 14 may in fact get the courage to save everybody at Zephyr Station, or at least those who he is able to save at Zephyr Station. He saves them because of us, because we travel back in time and give him the courage to save the people who he saves, and we might in fact give him a shotgun, which he then later gives to us to give to himself. It's a whole thing, but just want to make sure we were clear. So in the midst of everything going on, right? In the midst of everything going on, Queen Mara of the Space Elves may in fact hear a call, and that call may be like, hey, Mara, you want to be queen, you're going to need a kingdom. We might be able to help you out with that. Mara's like, I'm a space elf now. I do have magic. I can't access you. And so Mara has a lovely conversation with an expectant mother by the name of Riven. Riven says to Mara, hey, I'm going to be a single mom. The dad's who the hell knows where, all right? How about I do you this little favor? You give me a little bit of that space magic. We call it Even Stevens. Mara's like, all right, my people need a city, okay? Riven's like, done. Builds a city, Dreaming City. Very lovely, okay? Very gorgeous, all right? Fantastic. But here's the thing. Builds a giant shiny city in this distributary. So, basically a portal into our universe, okay? Builds the Dreaming City. Dreaming City is a big, pretty target. And so it attracts a species that we haven't experienced yet, known as the Taken. These dark, shadowy monsters, basically living embodiments of the Winnower, are like little, just like parasitic pieces of the fabric of darkness and destruction that lie beneath the universe. And they're like, ooh, the Dreaming City, very tasty, tasty. So the Dreaming City has a little bit of a Taken problem, and since the Dreaming City has access through the distributary into our universe, now the Taken have access to our universe. It's a grand old time. The Risen, who are now known as the Guardians, start gathering people together underneath the Traveler in what used to be Russia. They start building what is known as the Last City. That involves Osiris and Saint 14 and Tallulah Fairwind and all of these really cool characters. There's the whole back and forth. The Guardians end up starting battling the forces that are in the system, including the giant worms, right? In order to kind of like regain some balance. The Iron Lords get destroyed, right? Saint 14 ends up starting to hunt the Elixni because he thinks the Elixni are the biggest threat. After the whole Zephyr Station thing, he's like, I'm gonna get rid of them. I'm gonna destroy them in the system, right? Not realizing the exact plight of the Elixni, but that's a whole different thing altogether. They have a bunch of battles, things are going on. And amidst all of this, right? Amidst all of this, and this is where it gets confusing, right? They're fighting the Cabal, the Hive, which are now in the system because they followed as well, right? They're dealing with all of these different elements. And amidst all of it, they're searching out different ways of dealing with or finding technologies or picking back up the pieces of the golden age tech that were lost in order to build up the city and everything, and basically fight against the forces that are problematic. Osiris suggests to the leader of the last city, which is beneath the traveler, suggests to the speaker, which is the leader of the last city, says, hey, you know what? I think the way to fix this is to go use some Vex technology, right? And so he's like, hey, I am going to use some Vex technology in order to figure out how to stop any of this from happening and just make sure the golden age happens and nothing changes, right? So Osiris is like, I know how to access it. I know that there's a portal on Mercury. I'm going to go to Mercury. I'm going to use the technology on Mercury in order to access the Vex network and go back in time and change everything. Osiris goes back, goes to Mercury, accesses the Vex network, opens a portal to what they call the Infinite Forest, and in so doing, Osiris steps into the Infinite Forest and accesses 9,777,777,777,761 different timelines. He done screwed up. He gets a little lost in the process. Osiris, gone, right? Got banished. Osiris was what's known as a warlock, the magic users of the Guardian ranks, right? So he took off, went to do that. When Saint 14 comes back from fighting the Elixni, Saint 14 finds out that Osiris has gone to Mercury to access the Vex network. And he's like, crap, I gotta go save my boyfriend. So he takes off. Saint 14 was the head of the Titans, basically the tanky boys who like punch and headbutt their way out of every situation. That leaves the Warlocks and the Titans, and there's 3 ranks of Guardians, leaves those 2 without leaders, right? So they got to get replaced. So the Warlocks elect Ikora Rey to be their leader, and the Titans elect Zavala to be their leader, okay? And then last but not least, the leader of the Hunters, who are basically like the rogues who like to use like cowboy tactics and throw a lot of knives. They are being led by Cade 6, who is an Exo, who has been regenerated 6 times, right? And so that's the Vanguard. Those are the guys in charge. And this is the moment where you as the player have a ghost that finds you, regenerates you, and you're alive again. So yeah, I think I did it. I think that's all of Destiny in almost 60 seconds. I'm going to give all of you a moment to contemplate, if you will, which class I myself have chosen. And yes, I've only chosen one. So yeah, when all is said and done, we are resurrected by a ghost, like my guy back here. And we get to decide our fate, who we're going to become, right? We can be a magic-wielding warlock. We can be a attack from the shadows, ninja-like hunter. Or we can be a gruff and aggressive and aggro titan who is both strong in the ways of slamming, but also in the ways of the shield. We can be a member of the Awoken. We can be an Exo, or we can be a human. And in that moment of discovering ourselves, of realizing who we are, and contemplating somehow all of the knowledge of what's going on downloaded into our heads so that we are prepared for what comes next, we have a moment of epiphany. But in that moment, as kindergartens, we realize that in the face of all of that evil, against all of these foes, and dealing with all of these massive cosmic storylines and perplexities of a universe that we have now just been introduced to, there is but one thing that we need to do. Well, technically 2 things. The first thing I was going to mention was fucking fashion. Because, yeah, that is the end game of this game. You fight a lot of bad guys, but fashion and accessory choices. That's basically what we're all striving towards, is to make ourselves look as fashionable as possible, flying the things that reflect our personalities as much as possible, and using the weapons that really like act as flair for us. Yeah. But also, we fight the forces of evil, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like that is a far second to the fashion, if I'm being honest. And that, my friends, is the timeline in way more than 60 minutes. I tried, okay? I tried. What are you going to do? You going to make me deal with the Star Horse forever? So about that. The nine have this little squid-faced number named Zur, all right? He shows up, he introduces the Guardians to the nine. He gives them like concepts of the nine, right? And somewhere along the way, the nine decide that they're going to deposit a horse made out of star systems. I don't know. But yeah, okay, I brought you up to speed. But if you'd like more information, feel free to ask. And you know what? Because I appreciate you guys, I'm going to put the entirety of the timeline in the post, which leads up to Season of the Worthy, which is one of the seasons that happened in the past. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, feel free to let me know. It's a lot of information. Oh my God. I got through it, guys. Somebody send a ghost. I need to be regenerated.